Hey everybody, it's me, Chris Herman, here for another episode of On Deck. Today, our guest is Amy Reinen. Amy is our new media director. I'm really glad to have her here as a part of the crew. She's got a ton of experience in media and retail automotive. She's super cool, and she brings a lot of experience to the table here at the agency, and I wanted to get her on the podcast right away so we could, talk and dig into her media knowledge and her approach, just for a fun conversation, but also for our clients and anybody watching to learn more about the newest member of our crew. So without further ado, here we go. I bring you Amy Reinen. Amy, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am good. Amy Reinen, you are on deck. That's how we start the show. That's the big official intro right there.
Good.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Amy, you are a ripe 3 days old here.
That's right.
At the agency. You are our new media director, and we're thrilled to have you here. And so I thought, well, shit, why not? Let's just put you right on the spot here and bring you in on the show, and that way we can have a nice conversation. And also, we'll put this out, and this gives our clients and anybody wanting to know a little bit more about you a very quick way to do so. So, here we go.
Great.
You feeling good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, good. I thought that I would start off, not really particularly interview style, but we've had a number of conversations thus far, and you are originally from Windsor, Canada, which for those who don't know is just over the border from Detroit.
Right.
And you have had a very successful career in advertising and media. So what I guess my first question would be, and really it's not a lot of questions, but a conversation starter, if you will. What was it that drew you into the field of advertising at that point in your life?
I sort of stumbled into it, if you will.
Here, pull the mic a little bit closer to you. Yeah, there you go.
When I was in high school, it was the early 80s, and there was a big economic crash. And I thought my career path was actually going to be in law. But I don't come from a family of wealth, and I knew that I would have to, really work my way through and et cetera. And at that point, there were lawyers in Canada who were out of work. It was big news back then. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, I have to be practical here. And for me to go through another 4 or 5 years of school and then not get a job,
right,
that's going to be a problem for me. So a friend of the family worked for, now this is an automotive town, Champion Spark Plugs.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
And he was the advertising person. And we went to visit him one day at work, and I was mesmerized. They had like a little agency, maybe 4 or 5 people, but there were cameras and everything. Uh-huh. And the college near my house had a big advertising program. It was really well known in Canada. And they had an opening. I mean, it was a week before school. The courses normally has a waiting list of 30 people every year. Mm-hmm. And at the last minute, I applied, and they had, my GPA kind of brought me up to the top of the list. Ah. They had someone not show up, and there I was. So
literally within like a period of weeks, like you go meet this family friend, you see what he's doing, you're like,
yeah.
Wow, this looks great. Oh, there's an opening. Oh, I'm in.
Exactly.
Wow.
So after I finished that degree, I moved to the big city of Toronto.
Okay.
Which is like somebody, here moving to New York,
sure.
For advertising.
Yeah.
So I worked at Foster Advertising, which was my first foray into automotive, because I worked on exclusively, back then, Pontiac, Buick, GMC. And then I went to school at night to get my master's at the University of Toronto.
Really?
Right.
What's it like living in Toronto? Is living in a Canadian city any different than living in like a northern United States, U.S. city?
Yeah, there's subtle differences. I mean,
Right.
it's it's a big city,
Right.
and all the amenities and the traffic and everything. But Canadians are a little different. It's subtle, but they are a little nicer, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think they're a little more, compassionate, I guess,
Okay.
for one another. But don't get me wrong. I mean, it's still a big city, and it's
No,
still
yeah.
hustling, and people are,
Right.
trying to make it through their day. But of course, it was freezing cold and snow everywhere all the time, for half the year. But yeah, so I did that for, I guess, almost 3 years. And then I got a call from J. Walter Thompson in Detroit.
The big leagues, right?
The big leagues were calling.
They reached out to you.
Well, yeah, I had a friend who worked there.
Okay.
So they called and said, "Hey, we need a media assistant." So, but by the way, I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born in New York.
Oh, okay.
But my mother was Canadian, and she wanted to move back to Canada when I was about 4.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, I have dual citizenship.
And a New Yorker to boot.
Right. Once again, we circle back to New York.
Yeah, exactly. You'll do well here.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I ended up in the USA
Right.
working. So I did that. I worked as a media assistant, moved up to buyer, and then I went to an agency that did McDonald's for a little bit, and then I went to Campbell Ewald, which is the big Chevrolet shop.
Okay.
At the time, they had the account for 75 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So then the media group sort of consolidated with McCann Erickson, and they became this entity called LCI, Local Communications Inc., and it was the buying arm of
Right.
all of GM.
Okay.
So when that happened, the agencies had promised General Motors that Florida was such an important market that they would open up an office in Florida. So they came to me and said, "Amy, will you move to Florida and open up an office?" And that's how I arrived in Florida.
Right.
Yeah. So.
First, now was this like the first journey south really for you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Having always lived in the north. So what was your, like when you come down to Florida for the first time, what's the adjustment like for you getting here?
Well, it's almost like you're coming to almost a fantasy land almost, because the sky is so blue and the white clouds are so puffy, and really palm trees. I hadn't really seen a palm tree before in real life.
Right.
And just on TV and movies, and I've always been enthralled with palm trees. The first thing I did when I moved into my house is plant 4 of them, and I have another 12 in the back. But yeah, I mean, it's like you keep waiting for winter to come, but it doesn't. For those first couple years, you're
Right.
waiting for winter to come. But after that, you're acclimated, and you actually feel the seasons here. Mm-hmm. That there are subtle.
Oh yeah,
seasons.
definitely.
Yeah.
But it's super subtle, right? I mean, really, it's sort of like, fall and spring are like, okay, that's reasonable. Mm-hmm. Winter gets cool, and you're like, okay, this is nice. And then summer is, it's hot as hell, and you just deal with it. You get used to it.
Hey, I'll tell you, it's
right?
hotter in Detroit in the summer than it is here.
Really?
Absolutely, because
Different feel.
Yeah, well, they have something called the lake effect. It's surrounded by the Great Lakes,
Mm-hmm.
huge bodies of water. The humidity is stifling. Here, at least, we have a bit of a breeze, right? We're not far from the ocean. But in Detroit, when I lived there, it was not unusual to go to 99, 100, 102 in the summer. We rarely go over 97, 98.
Right.
Yeah, so.
I'm curious. We as an agency have, and I've been doing this retail automotive advertising and marketing for almost 25 years. And as we've discussed, I started my career at Zimmerman, and Zimmerman was and still is a media buying powerhouse type of shop. And so, I just remember coming up as an account executive and learning about media and how important it was, particularly at that time, because it was all traditional. Like there was no, so you really, as an AE, you had to know about media because you were talking to your clients about it a lot. And there was a specific breed of, and I would, it's not that there weren't men in the media department there were, but not a lot, right? And my experience as an agency owner has been that every one of our media directors has been female as well. And most of them have been of a particular generation and have a particular style and skill set, right? It's like Tom and I were joking about this the other day, and I've said this before. You guys are like, you're like it's like a certain breed, right? I'm not trying to date you or anything, but like there is a generation of women who have come up in the media business. Some way, somehow, you all cycled through, like, or you touched on New York a little bit here or there, or in these big shops. But there's a breed, it seems to me, and you all know each other down here. Yeah. You all know each other, and it's so interesting to me. And I want you to know, I draw a great sense of comfort, right, from having another member of the breed, if you will, here at the agency. So am I right in this? What is this all about? Like what has created this specific breed that I view you as a member of?
Well, I think back in the day, and going into the comment of, that's mostly women, and it is true. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think, number one, the pay was very low back in the day,
right,
for media, and women were more apt to start at the bottom and work their way up. When there were men in media, when there was a man in the media department, a rep firm wanted to steal them right away.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Because a media salesperson who actually had been a buyer, even if it was for a short period of time, had a great advantage.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And of course, unfortunately back then, most of the salespeople were men, or they were more valued almost, unfortunately. But yeah, so because I had been a supervisor, and a director at different points, and I managed male buyers, and I knew they weren't going to be around for long because some rep firm was going to steal them away with the lure of a lot of money.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty consistently, huh?
Pretty consistently. The other thing, too, is that I think that women may have more patience than men. And it's a very detailed job.
Right.
And I find that some men who have been in media couldn't really handle it for that long. They just thought it was, it was too time consuming. So,
well, there's a number, as I see it, there's a number of components, and there's an analytical component where you have to really learn how to study a market and how to study demographics and really make good decisions about who you're putting a message in front of. So there's that. Then there's the negotiation piece, which I think, a lot of people think that it's all that.
Right.
Which is a large part of it. Negotiating media, it's kind of like buying a car. There's a lot of back and forth. Mm-hmm. There's one person starting real high, you guys we're starting low, and then it can be that grind. Yep. So you've got to have that enjoyment, and then there's there is a time consuming clerical part to it where it's like making sure that every line is just right. Every commercial, every spot is the way you bought it, right?
Right, and there could be thousands, especially when you're talking about cable.
So when they start you off in the field, where do they start you? Like what out of, and let's just, assuming that I'm right on these three things, and you'll have a lot more color to add to that than I will, where do they start you? As a junior media person, what are they trying to teach you?
Yeah, well, usually you start as an assistant, which is basically you're doing a lot of that clerical work. You're doing a lot of the phone calls with the reps for make goods and housekeeping sort of things. And then after a certain period of time, based on your ability mostly and availability of a position, you would go into a junior buying position. And you would start off with, you would work closely with that buyer who you were their assistant, and you would get one of the smaller markets. Like, I remember when I first got promoted up to a junior buyer, my first market was Terre Haute, Indiana.
Ooh, sexy.
Yeah, it was really sexy. And it was awful because it was a time change market where Indiana doesn't change time along with everyone else. So half the year, the programming is an hour earlier or an hour later.
Oh, really?
So you had to do double estimating of numbers, But I remember the very first budget that I was given for Chevrolet. I had a budget of $14,000, and it was way more than I was making at the time.
So you're like, holy smokes.
And I lost sleep. I think it took me 3 weeks to do the buy,
Right.
because first I was new to it in a degree, but I was just so nervous about all this money, that I was going to be spending, and what if I made a mistake, or what if I bought something wrong, and
Right.
yeah. So, and then of course later in the career, I'm like, oh, we only have a $3 million budget for LA. What do you want me to do with that?
It just becomes numbers at a certain point in
Yes.
time. Like at first, it's like, oh
Yes.
my God, all this money I'm responsible for, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, it spills over to your personal life too, because you're like, oh, that car's only $40,000, or that purse is only $2,000. Wow.
Right. Yeah.
So
Gives you a different perspective on money, right?
Yeah,
Like to shift down
it
to
does.
like quote unquote regular numbers.
yeah,
or
it
whatever.
doesn't seem real because you're kind of dealing with play money almost in this business. You take it seriously. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I want to step back a little bit when you talked about the negotiating. People think that's the biggest part, and it is a big part. But you know what is bigger, I think, is that preparation for the negotiation and the research that you have to do, because nobody can be a good negotiator unless they know everything
Right.
Right. And you always say a good negotiator has something in their back pocket that they pull out at the last minute, right? And knowledge is power. And so you hold that little bit of knowledge back until the end. So yeah, I mean it's a lot of prep work. And as you get to you work with your markets and you work with certain reps and you get to know them and their style and they know you. Yes, it does get easier.
Right.
Right.
Well, because you have a history, you have a relationship, and and I would imagine to a degree, there's the element of one person or the other person trying to bullshit the other person sort of starts to go away, because you're like, listen, you're not going to push that crap on me. We're past that at this point in time, right?
Exactly.
So let's get down to the real deal.
Yeah, and I think to me that's one of the most challenging parts of the job is trying to decipher everybody selling you something and trying to drill it down to the truth. Mm-hmm. Because salespeople want to sell their product, and sometimes they don't mention something that maybe is important that could really change your mind.
Right.
Things like that, and you really have to ask a lot of questions. And I've been told that before, that I ask a lot of questions, but it's because I want to know. I want my powers, my knowledge, right?
Right.
So the more questions you ask, the more that's revealed, and then you find out, oh, well, that could be a problem, or oh, well, that's a problem, but could we make it into a opportunity? Because your goal is to make things work.
Right.
If there's something that you really think is great for a dealer, but it's super expensive, or there's a big component of it that really doesn't matter to us, well, my job is to make it work. Make it meet my demands.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you find, is it hard in the media field, like, because we talked before, you've got to develop relationships. Is it tough to develop relationships as a buyer working with reps when there's this component of salesmanship, going on?
Right.
Is there a phoniness that you sometimes have to deal with or cut through?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think where you had mentioned a minute ago about how it's like, okay, let's cut the bullshit now.
Right.
Okay, we know each other. You've tested me, okay, and you can see, that where you're going to go, or how far you're going to go, or how little you're going to go. So let's just try to make this work, and let's just cut to the chase, and work it out. And I've had, I have some reps that have been lifelong friends, and I've had reps that we kind of butted heads at the beginning and then became very good friends.
Right.
You know?
Those are usually the best ones, I always find.
Yes.
The ones that you struggle with at first, and then you work through your stuff, and then you're tight.
Right. And I've supervised and managed many buyers over the years, and I used to think, wow, like if they never have a little bit of a tussle sometimes, because they would come into me and say, hey, I had this rep and I've got this situation and she or he wants to do this and I think that, and and we work it out and give them some advice on how to make it work. But if someone never comes in and is just and reps say, oh my God, I just love that person, she's just so wonderful, I think, wow, is she just taking what is given to her,
right,
and saying, oh yes, this is great, I'm going to have my dealer look at it and not worry about the price, not worry about the components. And of course the salesperson loves that. I mean, who wouldn't?
Well, right. They're presenting something that A, they believe in,
right,
and B, they are hoping to sell it for whatever price that they have, right? Because they've put time into putting it together, so it means something to them.
Yeah.
It's not like they're trying to pass off garbage.
No.
It's our job to go, well, we don't need that.
I don't want that. I'm not paying for this. Yeah.
We need more of that, less of that, this, and it's got to cost about 40% less.
Exactly. Right. But if you're a salesperson and you hand it to someone, they're like, oh, okay, this looks great. We'll send the check next week.
Yeah, great.
Wouldn't you love them?
Well, of course. Yeah, as a salesperson, yeah.
Yeah.
Pay full sticker. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't love that?
Right. So, and we try to do it in a in a jovial way. Sometimes you can go a little further sometimes with humor.
Right.
Like, are you kidding me? What do you you think I'm going to buy this?
Yeah. Did you think I wasn't going to see this, right? What were you thinking? What were you thinking right there?
Yeah, exactly. But another thing too is with the evolution of, I guess people, and maybe now especially with the COVID, but people kind of hiding behind email, I think sometimes, and I really think that you need to have conversations, not every day, but on occasion you and your reps need to talk, and reps know that too, and they'll call you, and that's where the old media lunch came in, back in the day,
right,
where they wanted to get to know you and spend a little bit of time with you because they want to see how what you were made of,
right,
how did you tick, and whatever. So, but yeah, that's how you build relationships. But I see a lot more email and a lot less of that relationship building.
Well, and certainly, technology has changed the business. What I was going to ask you is, over the course of your career, what are the things that have changed how you approach the business the most? Like, what really changed it for you? Like along the way, there was just something like, okay, this is a big shift. We're still doing the same thing, but we've got to do it differently because of.
Yeah, I would say the real the advent of email, where everyone stopped the talking as much.
Right.
So that was a big thing.
Did it make it more difficult to get your job done because you weren't having those conversations?
Yes and no. But what happened was, and I think it's just, a symptom of what happened in the USA over the years,
right,
is that you got a lot more work. You're expected to get a lot more work done.
Right.
Because you did, talking on the phone is time consuming.
Sure.
And back in the day there was faxing,
yep,
which was a whole, time suck in a lot of ways. But yeah, we keep, getting more and more work. People expect to be done faster, quicker, less clerical support than ever. And but all this stuff has been happening for decades, probably a good 15 to 20 years, I think. But yeah, sometimes it's difficult to step back and take a deep breath and go, I'm really going to think about this, or I'm going to think of my strategy.
Oh, that happens to us, regularly.
Yes.
Sometimes you get so caught up, and we all fall prey to this. You get so caught up in getting the work done, get it done, get it out, boom. Okay, is it good? Yeah, but what's next? Boom, boom, boom. That you'll go for a period of time where you go, God, we need to like stop and slow down and think about what we're actually doing here as opposed to just processing. And I don't want to admit that we do that, but I think any company gets in those modes from time to time where you're just cranking it out, right?
Yep.
And you got to stop and be like, whoa.
Yep. Do you remember
we're getting paid to think here.
Right. And remember there used to be brainstorming meetings?
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time, that I'm new here. I don't, I'm sure you guys do that here, but
we've got one in 10 minutes.
I have one now. Yeah. But I remember being in brainstorming meetings, and I was lucky enough to be included because a lot of times that's a creative function. Mm-hmm. But they sometimes media people would be invited in. It's like, hey, the more the merrier, right? And I could see people, bouncing off, one idea, back and forth, and it accumulating into this other idea that's even better. Mm-hmm. And but again, that's time consuming, and you need to take a breath, and you can't go to a brainstorm meeting and think, oh my gosh, I've got 7 deadlines that I'm supposed to be working on right now. Mm-hmm. And they're due in 30 minutes. I'm exaggerating, but yeah, and some of it is experience, get things done quicker, obviously with experience. It's in every industry.
You've also had the unique experience of not only, being successful and operating in a number of capacities in the media field, right, within agencies and running teams and all that stuff, but you've also in your most previous position had a lot of interaction with the client, like a lot of one-on-one with dealers.
Yes.
Was that when you moved into that job and you had that experience and that responsibility, was that new for you in terms of like working so directly with the client?
Yes. I had worked at previously another small automotive agency here in town, mm-hmm. and we had some of that, but not to the degree. The last company that I worked for was unique in the sense that it was an in-house agency and everything was owned by the same person.
Right.
Right. There were partners, managing partners,
mm-hmm.
But in corporate, they all fell under that umbrella. So we were truly partners. We all reported to the same person.
Right.
At the end of the line, and their success was our success, and vice versa. And that's not that it's different really at any agency because.
Well, yeah, but no. In this case, being that agency and dealer have the same boss,
yep.
for lack of better terminology, right. Yeah, you're on the same team.
Yep, absolutely.
Doesn't mean that we aren't on the same team with our clients, but we're not both reporting to the same person.
Right, and that
technically.
Right, and that the line coming down from that person is worried about everything, not just the advertising. So if they've got a problem in another area, they might call on us to help them also with that. Mm-hmm. But some, the dealers really wanted to meet us. We were their team. We were their team, right? And of course, it depended on, travel times and deadlines and that sort of thing. But some dealers wanted to see you as often as possible, and others like, hey, I don't really have time. Maybe a couple times a year we'll meet up. Mm-hmm. And of course, there were several dealers that we could drive to, so that was, another thing where we got to see them more often. But I enjoyed that too. Getting to know that's really getting to know the automotive business, right?
Right.
And seeing the challenges that they have and the stress, and we would sit in a dealership we'd go to different dealerships, but for days on end, we'd go to dealerships and literally sit there the whole day. We'd be meeting on and off with the dealer, sometimes the service manager, sometimes, an F&I person for different reasons. But we would actually be sitting in the dealership and watching customers come and go and seeing how things operated.
Right.
And, get to know sometimes some of the salespeople.
It's so important, I'm sure it's true of any business.
Right.
We happen to be in retail automotive, and to really have that understanding of what it's like in the store.
Yes.
What they're really dealing with. Why is it hard to get a hold of them sometimes? Mm-hmm. Why is it hard to hold their attention sometimes, right? These things that if you haven't spent any time in the store really observing and seeing what it's really like, because you go sit at sit with the dealer for the day or for a couple hours, and chances are they're getting interrupted a lot.
Oh yes, they're up and down from their desk. They're running. Oh wait, I got to go to parts. I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come back and tell you, what happened in parts, why they needed to go there. A lot of times, it's like, hey, I had this problem and this happened, and it's all very interesting, and it's things that you don't know about if you don't go there, right?
Right.
And they have a very difficult job, as we all know, very stressful, and once in a while we'd come up with something. Well, okay, you had that problem there, but maybe there's something we can do to help, expedite that somehow,
mm-hmm.
even if it another report that we give you,
right.
Or something. A lot of times, we would see a certain demographic coming in and out of the dealership that we weren't addressing full on.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the dealers are astute as to who comes into their dealership, but sometimes it's like, hey, I'm noticing a lot of moms with kids, little kids coming in, maybe we should start looking at the minivan, budget or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah, it's very interesting.
You get all that feel. Again, you can put everything on a piece of paper and you can study and you can pull all your reports and you get all that stuff, but until you go down to the dealer and actually spend time there and talk with them, and a guy I've known for years used to always said, you can have all the charts and maps, but like a local captain's going to have that local knowledge, right? They're going to know, well, there's something under the water here that's not on the map, right?
Right.
And so just having that local knowledge from your partner, your client, the dealer, is really important, because, anybody who comes in, you think, oh, well, we've got this beautiful plan. Okay, that's great, but there's more to it than that.
Yes, and me being in media, I'm like, okay, well, we need to triple our budget, and we should be in this opportunity and that here and over here, and then you start the dealer starts to tell you what's really important to him and the constraints he has with his own budget,
right,
and why it has to be that way. And maybe there's a corporate edict or something with the manufacturer or the floor plan and all these things, right? And then you're like, okay, I get it. All right, let's pare this down. And we're salesmen too, in a way. Yeah. So, but at least we have to get to know our clients too, and know what makes them tick and what they're up against in order to make the plan work.
When you and I were going through the interview process, we talked about I guess the what I think is like the latest buzzword, what do you want to call it, like audience curation, audience targeting, OTT, this kind of stuff, and
KPI.
Yeah, and I've been giving that a lot more thought since we had the conversation, because you had some interesting answers, which was basically like, yeah, it's great, but right, like there's so much more to this puzzle, and I think it's funny now how the buzz, we've watched whatever the thing is go from one thing to the other, right? Like when it was traditional, it was like for car dealers, like most dealers, if you had them on a really aggressive radio station with some newspaper ads, probably doing okay.
Yeah.
TV was like, whoa,
Yeah.
But you got there. But then as digital came along, it was like, okay, websites, and then it was Google, and then Facebook. Like, and there's always some new thing that's the thing, and then after a while, it's like everybody's there, and it kind of gets played out. And so now, one of the new things, which is not that new, is this whole like, we've got access to a specific audience. We know that Amy is looking for this car in 3 months, and we're putting the ad in front of her.
Right.
Okay, cool. But we've been doing that for like 30 years, right? In different ways with different information. But it's not like 10 years ago, you just bought a TV station because you're like, well, I like that station. They're good.
I like that program.
Yeah, seems like a good show.
Right.
It was the same thing. We're looking at what you had as options to get in front of people. You had all types of reports that told you these people fall into these categories. Like this is not new.
Yep.
Right. It's being sold as like it's some amazing new thing.
Exactly.
And technology helps, but at the end of the day, it's still the same thing.
Yes.
Am I wrong? I mean,
you're absolutely right, Chris. And Okay, so I've been around the block for a while. I mean, when I started buying media, cable didn't exist.
Right.
Okay. So I've seen 35 years of new and shiny things happening.
Right.
Okay. And again, being a media buyer, you have to be a skeptic. Okay. You can't be mesmerized by this shiny new thing.
Right.
You have to research, you have to get to the nitty gritty. You have to find out what really makes this work and what is true about it. Okay.
I like that.
Yeah. You need to find the truth. What's true? And, I guess because, and again, you talked about like that genre of media buyers. And, when I was a media assistant, I was the shyest person you could ever meet. When my buyer wanted me to call a rep and tell them no about a make good, I was terrified. I wouldn't do it for 2 days. And she'd keep saying, did you call him? And I'm like, well, yeah, his assist, he's going to call me back. And I'd make up these little white lies. I was afraid to call him and tell him this bad news,
Right. Afraid of the conflict.
Right. But the longer you buy, it almost becomes a pride thing. It's like, well, wait a minute, they're kind of trying to pull the wool over my eyes. And, that's not good for my client. I need to make sure that I'm getting what's best for him. But it also is a personal thing too. It's like, do you really think I'm going to fall for that? Mm-hmm. Or, hey, like you said, what about this little part over here that you're kind of ignoring, but it's got a big price tag and the package price. So you become a skeptic. And I'm not saying that you become a optimistic skeptic.
Right.
Right?
Good statement. Yeah.
Yeah. But you have to say, okay, like, let's stop this bells and whistles and putting all these flashing lights in front of my eyes. Let's go through this and
Right.
figure out what's going to work. And, I find when there's this new media, there's huge amount of hype. I mean, every media outlet's talking about it. They have conventions, every third day and, around the country, and these buzzwords come up and everyone's all excited. Well, like you said, what's new about this? Mm-hmm. We've been figuring out audiences for 30 years and yes, our tools have gotten better.
Yeah.
Right. But we talked a little bit about how even now, as sharp as the tools are now with digital, they're not perfect. Nothing's perfect.
Right.
Right. But we talked about, I gave you an example of when I go to book a hotel room online, and I pretty much know, which hotel I want or what type and what have you. And I book it. But for 2 weeks, I'm still getting hotel ads served to me, Like, that ship sailed
Right.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And yes, I was in the market and I was a hot commodity.
Right.
But it was a very short window. Right. And so, yeah, there's problems with every medium, if you give or take. But I remember back in the day when Facebook was going around saying, you must move all of your money into video. We have these, 96%, viewing rate and whatever. I'm like, what? How is that possible? 96%? And everyone's jumping on the bandwagon and what have you. And we had to move all of our money, Facebook money, into video and what have you. And then, what was it, 6 months later, Facebook like is, oh, we're sorry, we made a mistake. We transposed that success rate. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding.
Right.
But you couldn't convince anyone.
Oh, I love, all the OTT providers, they and the ones that I know well enough, I'm like, you got to just stop saying that, right? They're like, we had a 97% completion rate. It's non-skippable.
Right.
Right. The only way it's not getting completed is if somebody turns off their screen, or if they're on a website, they go to a different website. Like it's not their choice.
Right.
To watch 97% of the video. So just stop saying that. It makes you look dumb.
It's not that your product is so good people can't take their eyes off of it, right? Yeah. See, you'd be a good media buyer.
That's
Chris.
the kind of crap that's the kind of crap that you're just like, stop. Just stop with that, right? Like, you've got something good, it's cool, but don't oversell a bunch of nonsense that everybody can see through, because you discredit yourself in the process of doing that. You make yourself look like you're passing off some BS.
Exactly.
Right? be honest about what you got. Like you said, I like that. Find the truth in what it is, okay? And let's deal from there.
Right.
Every operator of a store, that's where they want to operate from.
Right.
Is this BS? Is this real?
Yeah, that's how you become successful, right?
Right.
But I know an old. It's not that old. Recently, I've seen that presentation again. But the cable companies, what they do is they give you this presentation and they tell you that really you should be putting all your money in cable because cable's the top station in the market, and they'll take. The ABC affiliate, and they'll do a bar graph, right? A vertical bar graph. And, oh, yeah, here's ABC's audience, and here's NBC, and here's CBS, and here's cable. Well, that's 40 stations. Okay, so why don't we separate each one of them? Okay, and you're way down,
Right, yeah, nobody's watching 40 stations.
Right.
Right.
And you don't add them up and say you should put your money in cable. No, how about we take Fox News and put it up against.
Sure.
Because that's a network.
Right.
ABC's a network. CBS is a network. Cable is a medium.
Right.
And it'd be like, really, that's what makes, sometimes media buyers can be a little cranky sometimes. You can admit it, Chris.
Everyone I've known.
Because after 7 phone calls or 7 presentations by 3:00 in the afternoon, you're like, stop it.
Well, not only that, it's not only 7, however, even if it's 2 or 3 presentations a day, it's times 5 days a week, times 7, times how many weeks a year, da-da-da-da-da. When you're doing it, when you've been doing it for a long time, you're just like, I can just imagine you're just like, listen, honey, I don't have fucking time for this nonsense, right?
Right.
Like, come on.
And you're listening to all this stuff, right? And it takes a lot of your time and day because, again, you're working with different markets and different, everyone, the sales guys who took up all your time, they go home at 5:00 and you're starting your work at 5:00. Right. You know what I mean? So sometimes you get a little cranky about that.
Well, there's something to be said for, certainly you've come in contact with this type of person in your life, and this type of person can be a professional of any sorts. They can be a chef, they can be, a painter, a woodworker. Like, sometimes you're dealing with somebody who's been doing it just so long, right? And they're so damn good at it.
And they make it look easy.
And they make it look easy, but they just don't have time for anybody's BS, right? And so they have that sort of, that mentality where it's just like, no, yes. Yeah. That's and they're straight and direct to the point, like almost to the point where it can be off-putting, where you're like, oh my God, there was like no sugarcoating on that whatsoever. Right. It was just,
or they're not being fair. They didn't give me a chance to give me my whole presentation, or they made that decision. No, well, that's 30 years of experience. Right. I know where you're going with that.
Exactly. Know where you're headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all fun and interesting, though.
It's so funny.
But I had something happen a couple years ago where it was a cable company, and everyone's big into OTT. Somebody said, the hot dog vendor on the corner selling OTT now, right?
Right.
So
we've got an OTT tie-in into our cart here. You get 7 impressions,
and they all tie into like, I don't know, 4 or 5 platforms, or 5 or 6 or whatever, right? So you're really just buying. It's a different middleman,
right?
Okay, but so it was a big cable company, and my rep had come in and given me this presentation about OTT, and he was one of the guys that I could kibitz with, and he's a very smart man, and we had a lot of fun together, kind of arguing things. And I'd be, well, like, what about this? And what about that? And this was like pretty much, he said, it's my first time giving the presentation, like this new presentation. I'm going to come to you first, if you don't mind. Because he knew I'd have a lot of questions. I'd be like, well, what about this? And this is wrong. And you're being deceptive here, etc. So he goes, I kind of want you to be my guinea pig. So he comes in and he does it. And I go through my thing and he goes, can we set up a meeting with my research director? Because I want her to hear this, because she's the one who, spearheaded this presentation. And he said, I think that we need to get all of these things into the presentation up front, because when we give it to buyers, it's going to cut to a lot of, questions and whatever out. Let's just get it all right. So, I met with the research director a couple times for several hours at a time to help them with this presentation. And but at least they were concerned about what I had concerns about.
Right.
So that was nice. I really thought that they were smart to do that.
You mentioned something earlier, and it's so true, and you just wish that everybody operated this way, who is either in a position of sales or a position of negotiation. Listen, I mean, are you going to have those opportunities as a salesperson where you present full boat and you get full boat occasionally? Yeah, somebody's just going to be like, oh yeah, it looks good. But that's not the norm.
Right.
Doesn't mean you don't ask for it every time. You ask for it every time. You ask for all the money all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Always. And you try to pay as little as you can all the time. The truth of the matter is you're going to meet in the middle somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that to some degree, that if you're both kind of chipping away at it, you're going to arrive at something that's not what you want and it's not what they want, but it's a deal.
Right.
You can get there with bullshit and take twice as long.
Yep.
Or you can just get there and say, here's what we've got. Here's what I think the strengths are. Quite frankly, I know there's a little bit, maybe this isn't the strongest area here, but that's why we priced it accordingly. Like, straightforward, open dealing will result in a deal.
Right. And Chris, you're absolutely right. Like, over the years, a media rep will come in with their presentation on what they think you should buy and put a package together. I don't like to do it that way. Okay, I need to know what their opportunities are and what their programming is and stuff, but I like to do it the other way, to cut to the chase. And it's going to be better for them because they can see what I want and what I'm thinking.
Right.
So I like to put my own thing together.
Say, this is what we want.
Can you do this? I need you to do this.
Right.
And they'll go, oh, are you crazy? You want all the best programming at the cheapest rate and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's what's going to work for my dealer.
It's a better place to start because at least you don't have to suffer through a bunch of again, BS that doesn't suit what you want.
300,
right.
Especially in cable. Oh, but this package I put together has 2,000 spots a week. Well, 900 of them are on overnights.
Yeah, you sure you don't want dessert? I mean, let me show you the dessert. No, I don't have time for that. Like,
I tell them it's the 20-80 rule in life. There's 20% of your networks that have 80% of the audience.
Right.
Okay, there's an odd time where there's a niche network that's going to work for me, okay, based on high indexing of some sort, okay? If I'm maybe looking at males, 18 to 34, and there's a very low rated, sci-fi channel or something. Well, that's going to index probably high with them, especially with maybe Volkswagen. Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, I want that one, but not all the time. Right. I don't want it for Chevrolet, So, but yeah, I want to see. I've had cable reps give me a proposal with no Fox on it. Well, then why am I going? I mean, it's the number one network, right?
Right.
So why am I buying cable then if I'm not going to be on the number one network?
Right.
And that's like it for TV too. I also, or radio. I mean, I need to incorporate some of those top rated stations. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective. So yeah, it's fun. It can be fun.
I kind of miss, we haven't done it much, as the balance of budgets has become more digital, and B, certainly through COVID, sort of like the annual meet, so it's called the cattle call,
yes.
Right? I don't know.
Those are a waste of time, sort of.
They can be, but they can be kind of funny too. To sit, sometimes they're a waste of time, but I remember so many times just watching stations come in and they got, they show up, they got like 10 of them there and they got their big printouts of paper.
Yes. And then they're all talking to they're all in the lobby or whatever, and they're all like conversing. Yeah. They're all like, what do you got?
Exactly.
But again, that's sort of an inefficient way to go about it because a lot of times they're running almost blind. Yes, sometimes the client will give them, these are our particular goals, mm-hmm. but there's not a real conversation before that, where, oh, well, those are our goals, but, oh, yeah, this other thing could be important, or or whatever. So they go through this big dog and pony show.
Right.
And then you find out that they were totally off track. You need to move them over. But it's fun to see them all at the same time.
Media is fun, you know.
It
really is. It's a fun part of the business, and and that doesn't cross my mind often. That I'm saying it right now, but media is fun. Because it's sort of like a battle of the wits a little bit, and there's, you know, these crazy characters, and, you know, and at the end of the day, you know.
I think media attracts a lot of really smart people. You know, I'm not saying that about myself necessarily, but I'm just talking about, you know, these reps are smart. You know, they didn't get to where they are because, you know, they don't know what they're doing, but they're usually pretty interesting people. I find that they're, you know, they're versed on a lot of different subjects. You know, and advertising people in general, because advertising is just knowing culture, right? Our culture.
Oh, I can think of countless reps that we work or have worked with over the years that are super sharp, really fun, good people. You know, that you know, the good ones. You know, they got game. You know, they're cool to hang out with. They know their shit. Like those are the ones that I like to interact with.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And you know, I want them to have a good comeback to me too, you know?
Right?
Yeah. So I don't want them to walk away scared or something, you know, but I was talking to Lori Nicholas, one of your previous people, and I hadn't seen her in, I don't know, at least 15 years. Isn't that horrible?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking about, and I know I've never worked with Lori, but I knew her from media parties back in the day. And, you know, we used to have a lot of parties and get-togethers, and it was a lot of fun. And yes, it was like the 90s and the early 2000s, you know, and things were different. But, you know, we were talking about, hey, when's the last time, like, you've been to a media party? And of course, COVID is different. But I said, you know, well, I didn't really handle a lot of local. I was handling other markets. And on occasion, I would fly in for a party, but it wouldn't always work out because you were traveling. You know, had to travel and book off a couple days from the office and what have you. But that's how everyone knew everyone. You know? And plus, you know, people tend, you know, I said to Susie, I said, I hired Susie. Susie was the previous person that you had here. I hired her. She was the first person I hired when I moved here in 1998 for Campbell Ewald. And we worked together, and, you know, now she's working at a McDonald's agency, and I used to work at one, and now I'm working here at Herman, and she used to work here. So we get some of that too, where everyone knows someone from. We've
been very fortunate. We've in 15, almost 16 years, I've had 4 media directors.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And every one of them has been great. Every one of them, you know, slightly different in their style, but definitely all reasonably cut from the same cloth, which I enjoy. You know, Lori's done a great job and did a great job for us for so many years. We had Ashley for a while; she did fantastic. Susie was great. You're going to be great. You know, it's I like it. I like media. I like having, you know, it's been women, and I like smart, tough women who know their shit, you know, and who can have a good time.
Yeah. I'm excited to be here because I really like the vibe of your place, you know.
Thanks.
I had been previously at a very corporate type, you know, office structure.
Yeah, we need to give you this loose environment.
Yeah,
here.
I needed to like get loosened up a little bit, you know. You feel good vibes when you walk in the place, and you know, you see all the stage, and you've got this recording booth right here, and guitars everywhere, and music playing, and I really think it's like invigorating.
Well, cool. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Let's we'll do more of these, but let's wrap there, because I feel like we just had a really good conversation about about media. Now, on another time we'll do this. Then we're going to get into some other areas as well too, because I know there's some things that we've also talked about that are very interesting.
Okay.
But at this point in time, I want to say thank you. I want to say again, welcome to the crew here.
Thank you.
Really happy to have you here, and I've enjoyed this conversation very much, and I look forward to many more.
Yes, thanks, Chris.
All right, you got it. Thanks, Amy.